speaker of the word. But the lectionary for July has developed readings that spoke to me as an everyday Christian living each day. The United Methodist Church has taken the 6th through 10th Sundays of Pentecost, after Pentecost, with associated readings, created a theme called Healing Hands. I had the privilege in participating in the first Sunday with Fred in Bring Back Life. The subsequent Sundays, if you remember, we heard from Pastor Jeff. The second Sunday was Send Forth. As disciples, we are to share good news verbally and by actions. Third Sunday was Be Known. Like Jesus, be known by example. Jesus and John the Baptist became known by who they were and what they believed. Their action caused a reaction and became known all around the Sea of Galilee. It cost John the Baptist's life and eventually Jesus's too. We don't have to lose our heads to be known because we have the Holy Spirit, and I'll speak to that later. Fourth was draw crowds. Jesus was not looking for this, but it happened. He talked about loving each other and healing. Yes, it was the healing started small, but the word spread, and the crowds grew. Everyone wanted to be on this healing bandwagon. He was like a rock star, or a star of his time, maybe a superstar. Justin Bieber, Ronaldo the soccer fan, Joel Osteen, Warren Buffett, Queen Elizabeth, Taylor Swift, and even others, some which may not be favorites, but they all have star qualities. We don't have to be stars, but comfortable as you, as a person, as a Christian, just like Jesus was comfortable with himself. So Mark skipped over the whole feeding crowd. Why? The crowds did not come to see Jesus. The crowds were not hungry, but starving, spiritually starving, looking for healing, looking for hope. This was more important than hunger. These were the Jews. The Old Testament is based on the second coming. This prophet showed up and played a different tune and melody, not just paying homage to God, but to them he said, love yourselves, love others. God works through you. This was not the normal words from a prophet. A rock star indeed. So this brings us to this last Sunday. Feed the world. Signs of healing in terms of test, proof, and miracle. The feeding is the miracle that proves that there is healing and hope. The feeding of 5,000 is the only miracle in the 4 books of the apostles, except for the resurrection of Christ. These were Jews, Jesus' fellow Jews. Think about the components in the story. The first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I believe that's what you call the Torah. The 12 baskets of leftover collected. 12. How about the 12 tribes of Israel? Just some coincidence. The crowd had been there for 3 days. Jesus was concerned and said they were hungry. The disciples were worried about the food and water. Jesus calls 5,000 his own disciples and calls on ourselves to be believers, to trust that our own physical and spiritual needs will be fulfilled by the faith in acting out our faith. One cannot be passive and say, I am a Christian, a Methodist. But one has to believe and love, pray, and share. Then only can the grace of God be felt in you and others. Now let us look at the walk on the water miracle. The disciples and Jesus had a long day. They rode from Capernaum across Galilee, climbed a mountain, fed 5,000, watched Jesus healing and being a rock star. Everyone was tired. I think I would be tired. I think you guys would be tired. Just rowing, because there wasn't really much wind. They didn't have much of a sailboat. They really were just rowing across. So everyone was tired. Jesus was tired. As you've heard before, Jesus every so often wanted a break from himself. So it was dark, and he sent his disciples back to Capernaum, rowing in this little boat in the dark. They were bush-tired. And then a storm came up with winds and waves. Interesting how bad weather many times shows up at night. I'm sure you've been somewhere at night when thunderstorm or snowstorm shows up. It's a weird feeling, it's a helpless feeling. Disciples were in this storm and they were not making any progress. They were tired, scared. They were caught off guard and feeling helpless. Know the feeling? I've had it. Then they see a figure. It is Jesus. Not an apparition, walking on the water. Then Jesus spoke. It is I. Do not be afraid. Jesus walked over the boat. They took him in. They were no longer afraid, and they made it to the shore. Matthew talks about Peter walking out to meet him, sinking, and then walking with Jesus with faith. But I think Mark wanted to focus on Jesus coming into the boat of the disciples. This is very important. At least I think it is. Do you always have to come to Jesus for help? Or can he just show up on your shoulder or your doorstep in the situation without asking? Maybe you prayed, maybe you did not. But you believed in him and he was there. As a sidestep, oh, by the way, do you think Jesus might have had a sense of humor? Jesus fed 5,000 on a mountain with 5 loaves and 2 fish. The crowd saw the disciples leave in the dark without him. They continued running around the mountain looking for him. They never found him. I'm sure they heard some days later that he was back in Capernaum. They did not know about Jesus' divine way of transportation. Okay, we have these 2 miracles. The disciples followed Jesus because they physically saw him. When they did not see him, they were lost. This is the scenario when in the boat or the 5,000 with the 2 fish and loaves. They believed because they physically saw him, never had him in them. It was only when Jesus died on the cross, and the second greatest miracle, the resurrection, occurred. He gave us and his disciples the Holy Spirit. The Spirit is what is in us when we do an act of kindness, respecting and treating others as you want, as what God would expect. We are God's disciples. This week, our healing hands will encounter a challenge that is like feeding and healing, or get in someone's boat to help someone or somebody. Whether we know it or not, God is working through you and me with him. And trust me, you will know when he is there. Another way of expressing is in a sister reading of the letter to the Ephesian church by Paul, a church that may have been like ours in similar times. He says, he, I guess he means God, the Holy Spirit of Jesus, is able to do far more beyond all that we ask or think. Feed 5,000, walk on the water. According to the power, the Spirit of Jesus, God's grace, that work within us. Does that can-do attitude of the Holy Spirit give us hope? Through healing hands of our own and us as a church. Pray with me. God, you give us miracles, including your Son. Some are small and others are big. The biggest was your Son who died on the cross, was resurrected, and his Spirit is in each of us. Please give us the hope and strength to feed our masses, big or small, with spiritual and real food to everyone we see, meet, hug, and spend time with this week and in the future. We are Jesus' disciples and the only ones that can provide another with hope and with healing hands. Amen. Closing hymn is How Firm a Foundation.